Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. First and foremost, we want to respectfully acknowledge that Simon Fraser is on unceded Coast Salish territories. Unceded means that it was never given back to the indigenous people of British Columbia. And SFU is specifically built on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katsian nations. And we do this land acknowledgement before all of our events because we want to remember the history of this land, and we want to respect the indigenous people that were there before us, me, for example, as a settler, and who allow us to study and play and live and work on this land. So my name is Ise, and I'm a student staff and international services for students. I study biomedical physiology and biomedical engineering. There we go, double major. If anyone is also enrolled in that, we can do it. We'll make it happen. But I also work for ISS as the Global Connections Program Coordinator, along with Colin, who you're going to see the face of a little bit later in the slides. But a little bit about me is when I arrived at SFU as an international student, I was very academic focused. I had come from boarding school in Hong Kong, and for me, everything was about trying to finish my bachelor as fast as possible. And I met some friends, and they were very involved in the SFU community, and so I started getting involved myself. And I think I volunteered for an entire year with ISS before I got this job, and now it's been 2 wonderful years being involved in programs, both peer education and peer mentorship here. And I've learned a lot of things that you don't necessarily get to learn in classes themselves. But here's a little bit about our team. We're all SFU students. We're all third years and above from a vast variety of faculties. We all have different pathways, from international student to domestic student, from transfer student to high school student. We have FIC, we have BCIT. A lot of people are represented, and all the pathways are represented to benefit the mentees and the members that join our program. So when you're matched with a community leader, you're able to have someone with a similar pathway as yours, so that the questions that you may have, or the experiences that you may have, you can relate them to whoever you're going to be talking to. And besides this one-on-one peer support, we also have a variety of events that are under the theme of intercultural learning, transition support at SFU, and social connection. Our big goal is for people to get to know one another outside of faculties, and for people to really celebrate the diversity that is already there at SFU. And we just want to make it an even better thing, an even greater moment for everybody to be enjoying. And so if you're wondering whether this program is for you, we have a bunch of bullet points. So if you're newly starting at SFU, or if you're been there for a little bit, but you feel like you haven't had the SFU experience just yet, then this program is definitely for you. If you're looking for diverse connections to connect with people from all over the world, we definitely have that. And if you are wondering how to get a bit more of a personalized support in your transition to SFU, and if you want to share a little bit more personal experiences, then that's definitely something we can offer, along with intercultural learning opportunities. Intercultural meaning that we like for people to be able to communicate between cultures and appreciate the differences in cultures rather than only the similarities. And bonus, you can get co-curricular record recognition by joining in this program. So if you meet the program requirement, you'll be able to have this added to your co-curricular record, which is a document aside from your transcript, which tracks all of your involvement with SFU and kind of has, besides the academic involvement, you get to see that all about there. And of course, we'll send you a certificate of completion and a program t-shirt, because SFU merch is just the best. If you have any questions, feel free to email gcmp@sfu.ca. I will be answering you, or Colin will be answering you. And if you are just more curious and you want to get a little bit more information before you head on to asking questions or head on to apply to be part of this program, you can check out sfu.ca/student/ISAP, or you can also check us out on social media. You'll find a bunch of information there. You'll see some of our students, some of our stories, to get a bit of a better idea of what kind of environment you'd be joining. Now, I want to talk to you about some other opportunities you can take part of, especially as new students. And one of them is the welcome guides. If you go into sfu.ca/student/ISAP, you can find a variety of welcome guides that are according to your own pathway. So if you're an international student or if you're a transfer student, and you'll see all of your transition info into one single file, which is extremely useful if you have any question and if you kind of want to go through a little bit of a checklist and make sure that you're not forgetting everything. It really helps out, and it helped me out too. Something else to check out and to make sure that you're refreshing your email for is University Prep, which is a faculty-specific course. It's on Canvas, which is going to be the platform where most of your courses are going to be part of, except if you're in engineering. But if you're in any other faculties, it's all going to be on Canvas, so you don't need to worry. And you can learn a lot more about SFU resources there to help support you for your first year, and also to be aware for your support in your future years and as you go forth with your SFU career. And so once you activate your SFU ID, it should be 5 business days, and then you'll receive your specific course invitation. And that will be sent to your SFU email, so make sure to check that out. And you can go back to it throughout your first year. So if there's a question that you didn't have before, but now you have, you can always come back and it will be there for you. And always remember that there is an international student module and an FIC transfer student module. So those specific questions and this specific support is going to be there as well for you. Now, there's more in terms of engagement. So SFU 101 is also an online course, and it's just great to prepare you for your first term. And it's about knowing how to time manage and to know how to prepare for your academic schedule more than for further on than your first term, and kind of plan this out for yourself, and also to build a community and to make sure that you have the best time possible at SFU. And you meet wonderful people and you get to have great conversation to start you off for your university and just life in general. And we'll also have some welcome programming, which you will have within SFU 101. There's going to be a lot of information there for some orientation and programming. So I think that's it from me, and I will pass it on to Jean.
Thank you, Ise. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to leave my camera off for this portion of the presentation. There's a few things going on in the background for me here today. So hello, everyone. Welcome. As Ise mentioned, my name is Jean, and I'm one of the International Student Advisors Immigration Specialists working in the International Services for Students Office, or as we lovingly refer to it, ISS. I'm really fortunate to be part of an amazing team here. And before we dive into the immigration content of the session, I thought it might be helpful to provide a bit of context around what we do. So at ISS, we offer a range of services to help support your transition to SFU as an international student. Our advising is non-academic, so we're here to provide support with your temporary resident status or documents as an international student in Canada. Our 5 immigration specialists are all regulated Canadian immigration consultants. So we're licensed to provide advice on your study permit, your visa, on and off campus work regulations, and more. And in addition, we can provide advice on medical insurance and navigating the Canadian healthcare system, which you'll learn more about later in this session from people much more well-versed than I am, as well as transition support and intercultural programs like the ones that Ise has just described. The ISS office also includes our study abroad team, who coordinate international exchanges and field schools. So you'll meet them if you decide to incorporate an additional international dimension into your studies here. Next slide. So if you're looking to connect with an international student advisor for questions about your immigration documents, your work eligibility, or your medical insurance, there are a few different ways you can reach us. Currently, we're closed for in-person services, but we are offering advising via email, live chat, which is an online messaging system, phone and drop-in or booked appointments also, which are conducted via Zoom. Another great resource, and really the one I would suggest you access first whenever you have questions, is our website, where you can find the answers to most common questions. The website includes instruction guides on how to apply for or extend your immigration documents, as well as information on medical insurance, enrollment requirements, work eligibility, and more. These self-guided resources are actually available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whereas we advisors do need to sleep occasionally. So we always recommend checking our website as a first step to get immediate answers to your questions. So that's us and what we do. Now, as we move into the immigration section of the presentation, I'll also just draw your attention to the disclaimer at the bottom of each slide. Particularly in the context of COVID-19, immigration policy can change rapidly and without notice. It may even be changing as we speak. Wouldn't that be exciting? But the information that we share today is current as of today, which is March 22nd, 2021. Okay, so let's get started with the thrilling world of study permits. So to start on the topic of immigration, there are just a few must-know items about study permits. So first, you probably already know that you must hold a valid study permit for all in-Canada components of your program. Study permit applications must be submitted online to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, and you must be approved before coming to Canada to study. For those of you who are outside Canada, which I understand includes most of the people in the live session today, a study permit is not required for the period of time you're outside Canada. However, this will be needed when you are physically here, and you can only count the time spent studying outside Canada towards your eventual eligibility for a post-graduation work permit if you apply for a study permit before you begin your program. So apply as early as you can if you haven't already. In response to COVID-19, IRCC has introduced flexibility for students who are studying outside Canada. You can complete now up to 100% of your program from outside Canada and still maintain your eligibility for the work permit. And the time spent studying outside Canada through December 31st, 2021 will be counted towards the length of your work permit, provided you apply for a study permit before you begin studies and that the application is eventually approved. Depending on your nationality, in addition to your study permit, you may also need a temporary resident visa or electronic travel authorization, also known as an ETA, to enter or re-enter Canada. When applying for your study permit from outside Canada, a visa or ETA will be issued to you automatically upon approval of your study permit application if you need one. You'll also be given a study permit approval letter known as a letter of introduction, which you'll need to carry with you when you travel to the port of entry where the permit itself will be issued. So your study permit is a status document. It will allow you to remain in Canada for the period indicated on the permit. You must ensure that it is valid for the duration of your stay in Canada, so you might need to extend it if it will expire before you complete your program. We recommend applying for an extension a few months before the study permit expires, and you can find instructions for that on our website. I do want to note as well, because I know we have a number of transfer students in the session today, an extension can only be applied for from inside of Canada. So if you're outside Canada and you're holding a study permit that has expired or that will expire before you return, you must follow the process for a new initial study permit application and wait for approval before traveling back to Canada. You must provide proof of your acceptance or enrollment at SFU as part of this process. So if you have applied for a new study permit outside Canada using an acceptance letter from another institution, but you will now start at SFU, you must submit updated documents to IRCC before your application is approved. And you can do that via the online web form on their website. If your application is approved outside Canada and you did not include documents from SFU with that application, you must submit a new study permit application and wait for approval before you travel. If you're already holding a study permit, so you're holding the actual valid document in hand and you're transferring to SFU from Fraser International College or another post-secondary institution in Canada, you don't need to obtain a new study permit to start at SFU, but you are required to notify IRCC of the change to your school by completing an online process called the Designated Learning Institution or DLI transfer process. You can find a link to more information about that in our welcome guide for new transfer students. Keep in mind as well, if you're joining SFU from a high school in Canada, you're also not required to apply for a new study permit if yours is still valid, but if it will expire soon, you may need to extend it or apply for a new study permit from outside Canada. Next slide. So now just moving on to enrollment requirements, it's really important to be aware of your obligations as a study permit holder in Canada. First, you're expected to comply with your study permit conditions by actively pursuing your studies in Canada and making reasonable progress towards completion of your program, which is, I think, what we all want for ourselves anyway. But from IRCC's perspective, this means you must remain enrolled in each academic session during your studies. So for undergraduate students at SFU, this means spring and fall term. Your study permit will also allow you to legally work on and or off campus under certain circumstances. So first, to work on campus, you must hold a valid study permit. That permit must include a condition stating that you may work or may accept employment. You must also be enrolled full-time at SFU in the term when you wish to work. Generally speaking, full-time for undergraduate students at SFU means being enrolled in at least 9 units per term or a co-op work term. You can find a full definition on our enrollment requirements website, which we will include a link to in the follow-up email that we'll send after this session. To work off campus, in addition to being enrolled full-time and holding a valid study permit with work conditions, you must be enrolled in a program at SFU that is at least 6 months in length and leads to a degree, diploma, or certificate. There's a limit to the number of hours you may work off campus. Generally, you may work no more than 20 hours per week, but you can work full-time during scheduled breaks, for example, breaks between full-time terms or the summer term for undergraduate students, provided you enroll full-time in the terms immediately before and after that term at SFU. So keep in mind that because a scheduled break should fall within your program, your first term at SFU will not be a scheduled break for the purpose of work, even if it is in summer. So you'll need to enroll full-time in order to legally work in that term. And you'll also need to limit your off-campus work hours to a maximum 20 hours per week. However, you might be eligible for a scheduled break in future summer terms while you're at SFU. You can find more details on this in our enrollment requirements website as well. You'll also require a valid social insurance number, which is also known as a SIN for any work you do in Canada. This number is used for tax purposes and is required for your employer to pay you. So if you have applied for a study permit outside Canada and you're having it issued at the port of entry, please check the conditions when it is issued. So take a look at the document to ensure that there's a condition stating that you can work, and you can ask for it to be added if it's not there. Without that condition, you won't be able to start working. You won't be able to apply for a SIN. So it's helpful to get it corrected immediately on arrival if you can. If you're already holding a valid study permit without work conditions because it was issued based on another institution and you're now studying, starting full-time studies at SFU, you can apply to change the conditions of your study permit to have the work eligibility remarks added. The process to change conditions is the same as the process for an extension or a new application if you're outside Canada. So moving on to the next slide. For some types of work, a separate work permit will be required. So if you're accepted into an SFU co-op program, you'll need a valid co-op work permit to do your required work terms. You can apply for a co-op work permit from inside Canada after you've been accepted to co-op, and your SFU co-op coordinator can give you a letter in support of this application. And then after you complete your SFU program, you might also be eligible for a post-graduation work permit of up to 3 years in length if you were continuously enrolled full-time in every spring and fall term throughout your program, with the possible exception of your final term when you can be part-time. So if receiving a post-graduation work permit after your studies is a priority for you, which I know for many students it is, make sure to maintain full-time enrollment in the spring and fall terms every year. We do see work permit refusals in cases where students did not meet the full-time requirement in one or more terms. So this is where enrollment decisions early on in your academic career can really have, long-term impacts. And so on that admittedly ominous note, we'll shift gears a little bit and start talking now about considerations for traveling to Canada. Um, so on the next slide, yeah. So before I start, I just want to note a few things to make sure that we're setting the appropriate expectations. So I want to be really clear that the assessment of whether and when to travel is unique to each student and each situation. The Canadian government and SFU are not encouraging travel at this time for anyone who does not have a need to be here. I also want to recognize that immediate travel or return to Canada might not be the right decision for you at this time, even if it's possible to do, and that's okay. This is your decision to make, and it's a really personal one. So for those of you who are outside Canada, or even those who are in Canada and thinking about a trip back home, you might want to consider a few questions when deciding whether or not to travel. So first, do you meet the requirements to enter or re-enter Canada under the travel restrictions? How comfortable are you with international travel right now? Where will you feel safest? Where will you feel best supported? And do you need to be here? So are there reasons why studying remotely from outside Canada would be unrealistic or impossible at this time? What are your options? What are your priorities? What's in your best interest? So I do want to make sure that you're kind of taking the time to think about these things as you're making your plans. Given the majority of the summer 2021 term will be online, we're encouraging those who don't have a need to travel not to do so. It is a really personal decision, so it's important you consider what's best for you in the context of all these factors. So now onto the rules. As you're likely aware, the Canadian government has implemented some travel restrictions to protect public health during COVID-19. These restrictions stop most non-essential travel to Canada. And at this time, foreign nationals, including US citizens, can travel to Canada only if they're eligible to do so. So as always, even during quote unquote normal times, to travel to Canada, you'll require the appropriate immigration documents. So that's to say a study permit or a study permit approval letter. And depending on your country of citizenship, you may also need a temporary resident visa or electronic travel authorization. Now, when it comes to COVID-19 related travel restrictions, if you plan to come to Canada as an international student, you may be able to enter Canada if you have a valid study permit or you've been approved for a study permit and you're attending a designated learning institution or DLI with a COVID-19 readiness plan that's been approved by the province, such as SFU. So just be prepared to demonstrate that you're exempt from the travel restrictions and are traveling for a non-discretionary purpose, both at the airport in your departure country and when entering Canada. Now, the concept of essential or non-discretionary travel comes up a lot for us lately. So travel is deemed to be discretionary or non-discretionary depending on the individual circumstances. And the Canada Border Services Agency will really make that final determination on your eligibility to enter Canada. They'll make that decision at the port of entry when you arrive. International students who are coming to study at an approved institution will generally be considered to be traveling for a non-discretionary purpose, but the timing of your arrival is also important. So for example, although you should give yourself enough time to complete your mandatory COVID-19 requirements after entry, if you're arriving too far in advance of when your studies will begin, you could be refused entry because then it becomes a little bit trickier to show that you're coming for the purpose of studies if, for example, you're arriving 2 months before you have any classes to attend. If you're coming to Canada as an international student, it will be important to carry the necessary documents to show that you meet the requirements for entry and that you're coming to Canada to study. So these documents include a valid study permit or a port of entry letter of introduction that shows you were approved for a study permit, a valid letter of acceptance from SFU, and you should also carry a current confirmation of enrollment letter from SFU as proof that you were enrolled for the summer 2021 term and you're coming to pursue studies in this term. You can access that letter using GoSFU once you've selected courses for the upcoming term. You don't need proof that your courses are going to be in person. You just need to show that you are enrolled. Proof that you have enough money to support yourself and any family members who come with you to Canada. Also, if you've been living in a designated country outside Canada for at least 6 consecutive months in the year before you enter Canada, proof of a valid immigration medical exam may also be required. Keep in mind that medical exam results are valid for 1 year from the date of the exam. There are also some documents you'll need to carry to show you meet the health requirements to enter Canada, which we'll talk about on the next slide, and we can move to that now. So the current health requirements, first, you have probably heard all international travelers must quarantine for 14 days upon arrival, even if you don't have symptoms of COVID-19 and even if you have been vaccinated. The 14-day period includes a mandatory stay in a government-approved hotel for those traveling by air, and this is while you await the results of the COVID-19 test you'll take upon arrival. So with limited exceptions, very limited exceptions, travelers must show proof that they have pre-booked and prepaid for 3 nights in an approved hotel, and this will be at your own expense. The 14-day quarantine period begins on the day that you arrive in Canada. And after you arrive in Canada, a Government of Canada representative may call you to monitor your compliance with this requirement. So it's really important that you do comply. There are also a number of required COVID-19 tests associated with the travel process. So air travelers must take a COVID-19 molecular test within 72 hours of the scheduled departure time of your flight to Canada and show proof of your negative result for boarding. If you'll be entering Canada by land, you are required to show negative results from an acceptable molecular test taken in the United States within 72 hours before you arrive at the land border. Alternatively, if you have previously had COVID-19, you may show positive results from a test taken between 14 and 90 days prior to travel. This would exempt you from the post-arrival testing requirements as well. For those who are not exempt, upon arrival at the port of entry, you will be given a second COVID-19 test. You can pre-register for your arrivals test to make the arrival process smoother. You'll also be given a test kit upon arrival and will need to follow the instructions to do a third test on day 10 after arrival. Travelers are required to remain in quarantine until they've received a negative result for the day 10 test and have completed the full 14-day mandatory quarantine period. If at any point you test positive for COVID-19 after arrival, please just make sure to follow the instructions provided by public health officials. There are also a few requirements related to ArriveCan, which is the Government of Canada's digital tool to help travelers comply with border measures. All international travelers coming into Canada are required to submit their travel information via ArriveCan before they can board their flight or before arriving at the border for land travelers. You will need to provide travel and contact information, hotel booking confirmation, if applicable, a quarantine plan, and a COVID-19 symptom self-assessment, and will need to be ready to show your ArriveCan receipt when seeking entry into Canada. You must also confirm within 48 hours that you have arrived at your place of quarantine or isolation in Canada, and those in quarantine must complete a daily COVID-19 symptom self-assessment via ArriveCan or by phone during your quarantine period. So on the next slide, in addition to the federal government requirements, there are some other places where you should register your plans. It starts to feel like a bit of a festival of form filling. So the BC provincial government of British Columbia has also an online self-isolation plan for travelers to submit in advance of travel. This one is optional, but strongly recommended. Also, if you're holding a study permit approval letter for an application submitted outside Canada, you should complete the Vancouver International Airport or YVR expedited processing submission form. This will just help to speed up the process of issuing your study permit when you arrive. Again, this one is optional, but recommended to streamline your arrival process. You must also register your travel and isolation plans with SFU as early as possible once you know your travel date. This step will help SFU better coordinate supports for you during your quarantine period, including providing any needed support to you with developing your quarantine plan. So that one might actually help you with the other required registration pieces. So next slide. So I know that's a lot to take in. Luckily, SFU has prepared a step-by-step guide for you to follow as you prepare to travel to Canada. Our Traveling to Canada self-isolation guide includes detailed guidance on the steps you'll need to take before and during your travel to Canada, as well as during your quarantine period. The self-isolation guide is SFU's provincially approved COVID-19 readiness plan for those who are wondering, what the plan is or where they can access it. SFU has a team of dedicated staff who are available to support students throughout their self-isolation period. Advisors are also available if you need support in completing the required isolation plans or help in understanding and using the information in the guide. So please don't hesitate to reach out to the self-isolation support team. They can be reached at student_support@sfu.ca if you need any advice or assistance with developing your quarantine plan. And on the last slide, just to leave you with a few hopefully helpful tips. When it comes to your study permit, be sure to apply as soon as possible. If you're in Canada with a valid study permit that's nearing expiry, make sure that you apply to extend it before it expires. If you're transferring to SFU from FIC or another designated learning institution in Canada, don't forget to complete the DLI transfer to notify IRCC that you will now be studying here. This is definitely a time of information overload, but I also want to reiterate that our website has a lot of resources that will help you with your planning at this time, both as a new SFU student and when trying to stay up to date on COVID-19 related impacts for international students, and hopefully just general information as you move through your studies. When something like this, that's more of an orientation, it's hard to remember every step that you're going to need on the administrative side over the next few years. So please know that we expect to be here throughout your degree, and the website will as well. Please also be sure to monitor the Government of Canada websites for updates on travel restrictions and requirements. As I mentioned, these feel like they're constantly changing over the past year or so. And as always, if you have any questions whatsoever, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to help you and support you. So on that note, I'm just going to say thank you. I will look forward to speaking with you in the Q&A portion later. And I'll now pass the mic to Ricky, Bahara, and Hannah to talk about medical insurance and supports.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jean. Thank you for a very informative presentation. Just as a reminder, we will be sending you a follow-up email with all the resources mentioned in the chat, but also during the Jean's presentation. So no need to take photos or write down the notes. We will be sending you a follow-up email. And the presentation is recording, so we will be uploading that on our website as well. So we will be moving over to medical insurance now. I know that you are probably overwhelmed with all the information you have just heard, but just to give you a little more, and this is also a very important part of your journey at SFU. As an international student, you must have medical insurance for the entire duration of your studies. And if family members are coming with you to Canada, they should also have adequate medical insurance during their stay in Canada. In Canada, there are generally two types of medical insurance, primary and secondary, and you need both while you study at SFU. Next slide, please. And Ricky.
Yes, so primary medical insurance covers medically required services such as visits to doctors, hospital stays, and diagnostic medical testing. Primary medical insurance is legally required for all residents of British Columbia, including international students, and is provided through the BC Medical Services Plan, or simply known as MSP. Secondary medical insurance generally covers extras that are not covered by primary medical insurance, such as dental services, vision care, and prescription drugs. Eligible SFU undergraduate students receive secondary medical insurance through the SFSS Health and Dental Plan. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to give you a little more information on the GuardMe at SFU plan. GuardMe at SFU plan is a temporary primary medical insurance coverage, and then you will be automatically enrolled as soon as you enroll in your courses. And the goal of the GuardMe at SFU is to help you transition while you are waiting for your BCMSP and to allow you have immediate access to medical services in Canada. As international students at SFU, you are automatically enrolled, but only for your first term at SFU. So if you're transferring from FIC, this might be news to you. This is only for your first term, so you must switch to BCMSP as soon as you can. Your coverage starts on May 1st, 2021 through till the end of August, and we will not be enrolling you again in subsequent terms. The cost of GuardMe SFU plan is $281 per term, and as some of you may have already seen it reflected in your account if you're enrolled in courses, and is included in your student fees. Electronic medical card will be mailed to your SFU email address at the beginning of the summer term, and you can enroll your dependent family members in your GuardMe plan with additional cost. Now, a lot of you are not here in Canada right now, so if you're not physically in Canada, you can opt out of this plan by May 30th for full refund. And if you're planning to arrive in BC physically before the term begins, please ensure you purchase early arrival insurance to have adequate medical insurance coverage prior to May 1st. If you're in BC currently and have BCMSP, you can also opt out by June 15th. So slightly different deadline here for full refund, and by July 30th for partial refund. To be eligible for refund, you must not have used GuardMe plan. You can opt out of GuardMe if you already have BCMSP or if you're not physically in Canada again for the summer term, and you can submit the opt-out request online. And please note that if you do not opt out of GuardMe and or cancel your BCMSP because you're not physically in Canada, you must ensure that you have adequate medical insurance coverage upon your return. So let's say if you opt out for the summer term, but you're returning late August for the fall term, you must ensure that you have adequate medical insurance coverage upon your arrival. Please contact us before you travel to learn your options. Back to Ricky.
BCMSP is a provincially primary medical insurance, and all students staying in BC for 6 months or longer are required to enroll under the Medicare Protection Act. Unlike GuardMe at SFU, it is not an automatic enrollment and cannot be done through SFU. If you are physically in BC and haven't done so already, please apply right away online, or you can apply as soon as you arrive in BC. For a new BC resident, you must fulfill the waiting period of 2 to 3 months. To apply for BCMSP, your current study permit must be valid for a period of 6 months or more. If you have any dependents, you can add them to your plan when you apply. The cost for BCMSP is $75 per month for all study permit holders. You will receive an invoice monthly by the mail, and you can make the payments online, by mail, or by direct debits. This charge does not appear on your SFU student account, and you are responsible to make monthly payments. If you have been living in BC for a while and haven't applied for BCMSP yet, note that when your BCMSP application is processed, your coverage and fees will be backdated to the date you became eligible for MSP. However, backdating will not extend prior to September 1st of 2019. Another important thing to note is that your MSP coverage will expire with your study permit. When you renew your study permit, you will need to renew your MSP coverage as well. Normally, you would renew your study permit first and submit a copy of your renewed study permit to extend your MSP coverage. If you are currently in Canada and you are planning to leave BC and study from your home countries for the next term, and if you're covered by BC MSP, you must contact BC MSP directly to inform them about your absence and discuss your coverage options. Next slide, and I'll pass it on to Bahari.
Thanks so much, Ricky. We can jump ahead to the next slide. So my name is Bahar Jokra, and I'll be talking about the SFSS Extended Health and Dental Plan. We've already touched on it already, but just to reiterate, BC MSP is different from the Extended Health and Dental Plan that you have available to you through your student association. So BC MSP will cover you for all of your basic healthcare needs, like going to the doctors, going to a hospital, getting blood work done, and your student plan will cover you for everything that's not covered, such as, the ambulance ride to the hospital should you have an emergency, prescription drugs, dental, so on and so forth. Can we jump on to the next slide, please? So the 4 key areas of coverage on the Extended Health and Dental Plan are as follows. We have health, vision, dental, and travel. For health coverage, we're looking at prescription drugs, vaccinations, health practitioners, which include psychologists, registered clinical counselors, massage, physio, chiro, and a number of other health practitioners, as well as medical equipment should you have an emergency and require, say, crutches or a brace of some sort. We have vision care, so that includes eye exams, which are typically covered every 24 months. It's highly encouraged that folks make sure that they have healthy eyes while they're students, as well as contact lens and eyeglasses coverage. And then dental coverage also includes like cleanings, checkups, fillings, extractions of wisdom teeth, and so on. For travel coverage, I'm going to make a quick note here. If you are an international student returning to your home country or an international student traveling to Canada, the travel coverage would not cover you during those periods. However, the travel coverage is available and supports students who are going away on exchange or abroad or just traveling during their break periods, and covers you for up to $5 million up to 120 days. We have reviewed and revisited the travel coverage to expand the coverage to support students during COVID-19, but we do obviously encourage students to check the Canadian federal website to monitor all the travel restrictions and all of the implications of traveling, as well as to check our travel policy that is available to you on our website, as well as ask us any questions that you might have regarding the travel coverage prior to your departure. Next slide, please. So one of the services that you have available to you as a student is the student care networks. Our networks are available to anyone who's enrolled on a student care plan and are national. And essentially how the networks work are, we have a list of practitioners that we work with that offer our students a discount. And essentially what that means is that, for example, if you go to one of our massage therapists, they'll give you a discount on the service. And so that'll just help ease the burden of the overall cost of the service that you're receiving. But it's not necessary for you to go to a network practitioner. You can go to one if you choose. And another example of how the networks work, if we can jump to the next slide. So for dental coverage, I think it's a really clear example. In the first column here, we have your insured portion. So that's what's automatically covered by the Extended Health and Dental Plan. You can use that at any licensed practitioner across Canada, and you'll receive those back in terms of services that you can claim for. In the second column, we have the network discounts. So in British Columbia, you receive 20% from our network practitioners on the dental network for a total coverage of 100% for preventative services, 90% for basic services, and then for major restoratives that aren't covered, you also receive the 20% discount. So again, this is just a way for you to extend kind of those, the dollar amount that's available through the Extended Health and Dental Plan. Another thing that I'll note is that we have a national partnership with Rexall. So for students who get their prescriptions filled at Rexall, they will receive up to 10% up to $40 per prescription refill. If we could jump to the next slide. So if you are starting your studies this May, you can self-enroll onto the Extended Health and Dental Plan. So in order to access these benefits, again, if you are a student who is coming to Canada and you are starting your studies in May, you can self-enroll onto the benefits. However, if you are starting your studies in the fall, so come September, you will be automatically enrolled. So for all students who come in May and then continue their studies into the fall, you will be re-enrolled onto the plan starting September 1st. But for those of you who'd like to have access to these benefits, if you are arriving before fall, you have to self-enroll from May 7th to May 21st of 2021. This is also an opportunity for you to enroll your dependents. So dependents are a partner, a spouse, and or dependent children, and they will have access to the same benefits that you have available to you through the extended health and dental plan, and that comes at an additional cost. So you would have to pay in order to enroll dependents. But again, if you would like to have access to these benefits, you need to self-enroll if you start your studies in May. Next slide, please. So once you've been enrolled on the extended health and dental plan, if you ever have any questions or if you want to know about what's covered under the plan, how much is covered under the plan, how much money is available to you, if you've made claims kind of afterwards, the remaining amounts, you can always give us a call. That is a dedicated direct number for SFSS members. And it's available Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I should preface that for our folks who are joining from abroad. If you are joining from Eastern Canada, again, it is also available 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. But for BC folks, it's Pacific Standard Time. And you can also visit our website. My colleague Ali has been posting a number of links in the chat with respect to different services and different things that we've touched on regarding the health and dental plan. The website is a really, really wonderful resource and provides all the information that we've touched on today and then some. So it's really helpful to just explore it a little bit to see what's covered under the plan. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us. And obviously, once the campus kind of goes back to in-person, we also have a on-campus office that will be opening. Our new office will be located in the new Student Union building. Obviously, once you folks are exploring campus, you'll come across it. But for the time being, these are the resources that are available to you in terms of getting help and support. And with that, I will pass it over to the next speaker.
Thank you. So I just wanted to provide an overview of our services here at Health and Counseling. We have a team of doctors, psychologists, mental health nurses that are available to help you during your studies at SFU. Just to note that due to COVID-19, many of our services are going online and we are seeing students through Zoom or telephone. If you need to see one of our providers, please call the number listed on the slide. An important fact to remember, due to medical laws, we're not able to provide any services to anyone who is not living in British Columbia at this time. Next slide, please. So I'm the transition case manager here at SFU. I provide support specifically to students from international pathways and work to support them with their transition to SFU, and as well as their transition out of SFSU when you graduate. So I provide a variety of support in different areas, including mental health, culture shock, finances, understanding different systems, labor market, employment information, and much more. Feel free to connect with me. I'm more than happy to support you during your time here at SFU. Next slide. As many of you might not be on campus yet, we have a variety of online programs and resources available to you. Please check out our website as shown here and access the free online services that best fits your needs. And one more slide, please, the next one. As I first mentioned, if you are not in BC, we are not able to provide any services to you, but we have the My SSP program. This is a free mental health program available to any SFU student. You can access it even if you are not in Canada. The program is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call the number on the slide, or you can download the app from the Google Play or Apple Store. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Hannah.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bahare and Ricky, for joining for the medical insurance presentation. So now we will move on to our question and answer session. As such, we will end the recording now. For those of you watching the recorded version of this session, thank you so much for watching. Welcome to SFU, and please do connect with us if you have any follow-up questions.